Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to be discussing a little horror Valentine's Day film, if you will, the 2024 Nosferatu. Now, this is your cup of tea. If you like horror and you like your horror to have a little romantic undertone, this may or may not be the movie for you, but let's discuss it. Actually, of course, as you can see, I'm not here alone. I have a counterpart here today. I have an evil dose. How's it going?
I'm doing all right. Thanks. We're going to explore whether or not love sucks or not.
Oh, good. That's a good tagline for this movie here. Does love suck?
I did text that to you as a thought, but you've been taking these classes. I don't even know what you're taking classes in, but you know.
I'll tell you after the show. We'll discuss it after.
All right.
But today, again, we're talking about Nosferatu, the 2024 version. And it came out not that long ago. It was just recently released in streaming. So we're like, okay, let's check it out. And we're just going to get in a couple of our thoughts and discuss the film. So, of course, the movie is about a vampire, right? And this is like the true sense of a vampire, not the Twilight vamps. Okay, this is book accurate vampirism when you think about it. And it's kind of hard to describe. It's about a woman who has this weird connection to Count Olaf, who is a vampire. I think that's kind of like the simplest description of the movie. But when you went into the movie, or as far as when you watched the movie Evil Dose, do you have like any prior knowledge of Nosferatu, or you went in there just kind of fresh?
Well, I mean, I knew it was a remake of Dracula without calling it Dracula. And Nosferatu was the silent film, which was also based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, without using the name, because I think Bram Stoker's Dracula was still under copyright protection back when they were making silent films. And you know, everyone knows Nosferatu, and if you haven't seen it, from the Queen and David Bowie video Under Pressure, where the Nosferatu is depicted plenty of times, and they see scenes from it, that creepy old bald guy with big ears, pointy nose, and two teeth right in the front, almost like a rodent teeth right in the front of him. And then the filmmaker Robert Eggers, who's done some movies I love and some movies that I thought were a little bit overrated. But he said it right. It's right there. This was basically an homage to I think he said the year of Nosferatu and the 1992 Francis Ford Coppola Dracula. What I thought he would do would add something new to it, and he really didn't. He added one thing to it, which is critical because it's right in the beginning, and I picked up on it. I was looking for it because it's so similar to sort of his trope in the movie The Witch, which I love. But
I've seen that one.
I love The Witch, but you really have to pay attention to the dialogue, like in the first 10 or 15 minutes of The Witch. And so I knew to do the same thing with this one. So I watched the first, the first speaking parts like 3 times on this to hear it. And the trope he likes to go with is, Stephen King always sort of uses like the magical, indigenous, the magical Negro, the magical Indian person, the magical gypsy, whatever. Well, Robert Eggers loves to use the magical woman or girl, really, and he did cast a young woman to look like she was probably still a teenager, which, there's nothing wrong with that in the 1800s in England. That was sort of, normal back then. But he did cast women that look like, they were probably 16. But he uses the magical girl who nobody quite understands that they're magical. No one quite listens to them. And there's always a man who botches it up either intentionally or unintentionally. Mm-hmm. He's not the only one. Interestingly enough, I'm pretty sure that the father from The Witch is the same actor who played the Doctor in Nosferatu. And I think he also played the Green Knight in The Green Knight, which was another A24 film. Maybe it was Robert Eggers, maybe not.
Okay, I wouldn't be surprised. These directors do like to recycle actors that they, have used in previous stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same guy.
This actor I liked. He was in The Menu, and he was also wasn't he Beast in like the X-Men?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. He was also in this show, this British show I used to watch back in the day, and it's escaping me the name. It was kind of like the Grassy of England. It was so good.
Okay.
But yeah, that's when I first was introduced to this actor here. But what's interesting to me about this movie wasn't so much what we saw. It's more about trying to figure out, for me, is what's the meaning behind it? Like, is it because of course we have Ellen, who has this weird connection, who's just kind of like drawn to and by Nosferatu, aka Count Olark.
Right, which was actually a pretty cool name. For now, Ellen, I'm just going to call her Mina Harker because she's Mina Harker, and I'm going to probably call Count Orlok from time to time Dracula because he's Count Dracula.
Now, Mina, is this from the movie with what's her name in it?
Winona Ryder, wasn't?
Yeah, Winona. Okay. I haven't seen it, but I've seen like clips of it on like TikTok when people were like comparing Olark to that Dracula.
Right.
Okay, interesting.
And remember the text I sent you like 10 minutes in with my little nitpicks?
Okay, yeah.
I don't. I'm hoping you do. But I remember one thing. It's like
something about the magical girl.
Well, yeah. I mean, the magical girl. I'm not sure I figured that out at that point. But like they're saying 1833 Germany. There was no Germany in 1833. Like Germany wasn't a thing until like Kaiser Wilhelm and Bismarck and all of that. I mean, Germany was like 80 different duchies and principalities. So that was the first thing. But like I was wondering, like the whole thing in Dracula was that he had to be shipped over the channel, and vampires can't easily travel over water, so he had to be shipped over the British channel. I'm like, from Transylvania to Germany, you can do that over land. You don't need to do the sea voyage. But they still did a sea voyage nonetheless, which I guess I prefer. But like, why put it in Germany?
Now, was the original set in Germany, or is this something that they changed for this film?
No, this is the original was he was moving to London, which is nothing. Everybody spoke with British accents, which was except they would call him her, which is like Mr. for German. But again, those are nitpicks. I mean, I guess he sort of wanted to make the movie his own, but he only sort of made the movie his own. So in the beginning of The Witch, it opens up with a trial where the Puritans cast out this family of Puritans for being too extreme. And we don't know what it's about. And then later on, when they find this cove, surrounded by woods, there's a little exchange between the husband and wife where he said, basically that most people lose, 2 out of their, or 4 out of their 5 kids or something. And we've been blessed. We haven't lost nary a one, which led me to believe after watching a couple of times that the father in The Witch was praying to a different God. And that's what he was so strange. He thought he was praying to God, but he was praying to the devil, which is what awakened the witch. The reason I bring this up is because the opening scene of Nosferatu is Ellen, sort of having dreams and praying to, there she is, praying to her guardian angel. And then all of a sudden you hear the guardian angel's voice, almost like Midnight Mass, where the priest must stick a vampire on the road to Damascus with an angel, and convince himself that the face is horrible to behold and it drives you to madness, and don't be afraid, just like all the Psalms and Ezekiel's and the prophets say. Well, she's like, my guardian angel, come and rescue me, come, I swear myself to you. And then you hear, you have awoken me. Shall you be mine eternally? Shall we be bound everlasting? Do you promise? He's like, it's like, will you accept the rose from the wolf in the pale moonlight? Like,
this is so funny because on TikTok, I don't know if you've seen this on TikTok, there's these videos about his accent and how he sounds and how thirsty he is over Ellen. It's talking about Count Olaf. There's all these, you must mount Sonny. All this crazy things.
And she's like, Yes, and then you see that she's like sleepwalking, and then later on they talk about her melancholies. So we let her know she's been a magic girl the whole time, but she's been misdiagnosed by the poor medical of the day.
Yeah.
Um, so she so in Dracula, she didn't awaken him. In the movie, Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, one of the ridiculous things is that his wife died. That drove him to curse God, and God cursed him back by making him a vampire or something like that. And then Mina Harker, the Winona Ryder character, was basically his lost love reincarnated. And when he
Mm.
discovered that, that's why he wanted to go to London and wreak havoc on Jonathan Harker and all his life. In the book Dracula, Dracula just wanted to get to London. It just was Jonathan Harker's bad luck that he was the deputy clerk in what was a real estate office, lawyers or whatever, and they sent him over to sign the papers because of course you had to send him over because the vampire couldn't get there without having someplace to put his home turf.
Mhm.
So there was nothing about Mina Harker in there until Dracula and his three witches, his three vampiresses, suck that. And then Dracula, being pure evil, because he met Jonathan Harker, decided I'm going to destroy Jonathan Harker and everything in and about his life, because that's what I do. I'm going to build myself my little army and steal, a woman or so, and then I'll be in England and have my little fiefdom. Because in Dracula, he had this whole village of gypsies that were serving him, but I guess they were sort of a persecuted class, and he was losing his power. Guess he didn't feel that safe. He also, I think, wanted to be in a world of more modernity, maybe new feeding grounds, so to
Mhm.
speak, where not everyone knew what a strigo, a vampire, a wumpire was. In this, the village of gypsies very much was not serving him. Um,
Yeah, they knew exactly what he was, and they were warding themselves against him.
Yeah, I think so. Though the dream, not dream sequence that confuses me, except the fact that I guess they had an excuse to have of course, in the Gypsy Village they have the hottest woman, in the movie who's got perfectly formed breasts that has to be naked, on that where
Mhm.
everyone else looked like a 14-year-old prepubescent girl, just because I don't know, but anyway, we can get to. I've been monologuing for a while, but there's so many parallels. I think the compare and contrast from the original book, the original movie, which was really a truer version of the book, but it was silent. So, and it was also like 35 minutes
Okay.
to this. And what bothers me about this is that Robert Eggers, who's a great filmmaker, it truly was an homage. And some of it was beautiful and some of it really was palpable. But he added almost nothing to this other than what he already said in The Witch, is that men are stupid, but magical girls can also be stupid and being taken advantage of. But in the end, the woman is the one that's strong enough to kill the evil.
See, so I kind of disagree because even though I haven't seen the original, right, I feel like this movie kind of blurred the lines as to what is the relationship between Ellen and Count Olark. Is this, from some of the dialogue, it kind of seems as if she either summoned him or created him in some way, or it was kind of like an allegory to her like sexual awakening,
Right.
and very much so heavily in this whole movie. It was almost as if she couldn't be satisfied sexually by anyone else but Count Orlok, to the point that when she was even sleeping with Thomas, she was kind of doing it to show off that she could orgasm with another person besides Olark. I don't know. It's something. There was definitely that sexual dynamic there,
Oh, definitely.
and it was kind of odd. It was like she was, Thomas was in competition almost for her affections, and to Olark, and it was a weird connection between the two of them. So much so, at the end of the movie, when they do have that sexual encounter, it just was so. It led to the death of both characters. Spoiler alert. This is, we're talking about the movie, but to me, it very much felt like an allegory for sexual awakening and her kind of shame of her desire for him, because even since she was younger, she said that she felt dirty because of the encounters that she had with this vampire,
Right.
right?
and they were talking about that they wanted to have a child, and he was focused on getting her money and nice things because all of his friends were rich and lordly. And all.
Yeah.
By the way, it was the same thing in the Witch. She was a girl coming of age, and I mean, but nobody did this better than the movie Ginger Snaps. But I 100% agree. That's why I say I don't think it was an accident the women that were cast looked like they were prepubescent teenage, like tweens, like somewhere between 12 and 14. And not on, all the hormones and all the things that we're on in the 20th and 21st century that, makes us sort of mature more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But I absolutely agree with that. Also, like a lot of times when they showed her orgasms in her mind and in her body, she was twitching and, in like basically epileptic or sort of like the ring-like, poses of where a body shouldn't twist in that way. So there was also a duality and a struggle and a conflict with that. Of course, the vampire has, powers that would make it very insinuating, very tempting, very confusing. He's old and powerful and earthy and, basically in control of everything. So yeah, I think that conflict was supposed to be there. And it was the same with Mina Harker, and it's the same in The Witch. Now, in some of Eggers' movies and in some of A24's movies, at the end, whoever it is gives in to the evil, then the temptation, whether it's evil or not. And Hereditary, Payman is revealed to be correct, and in the end, the witch is revealed to in fact be a witch and the sole survivor of her family. And in fact, she was talking to the devil the whole time. But in The Lighthouse, it was madness. I mean, they were suffering from madness. So he sort of goes back and forth. With this, it was a little bit different. But in the movie Men, which I think was also Robert Eggers, I mean, it took, the primordial woman to defeat the primordial man, or the free woman that was free of fear and constraint and whatever to beat them. So I think this is something he wants to say over and over again, which is fine. I mean, I guess he's an ally, but
I haven't seen many of his films. I have seen The Witch. I know that he is going to be doing the second Labyrinth, the sequel to Labyrinth that was kind of like broadcasted a little while ago. And honestly, I'm a little concerned. But I'm keeping an open mind.
I have to rewatch Labyrinth. I don't remember a thing about except David Bowie.
Oh, that's one of my favorite movies. I got it on DVD still to this day.
Okay. Well, maybe maybe before that we'll have to do that show. So
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, unless everyone says never put that guy in your screen again.
No. But as far as the characters are concerned, again, let's just go through them. We got Count Orlark, we have Ellen, we have Thomas, who I felt bad for the first half of this movie. And then after a while, I started to feel less and less bad for. The only characters that I had some sort of remorse for were Frederick and his wife Anna, because they were very hospitable and it led them to their demise. Like they allowed her to stay in their home far longer than I would have, given all of the trouble she was causing. Right?
Well, apparently she had similar problems in the past. Now, it didn't usually lead to. So her friend, what was her friend's name in this movie?
Anna.
Anna. Okay, so I'm going to call her Lucy because she's the role of Lucy in Lucy in Dracula. Basically got taken by the vampire in the form of a wolf and started to like it. So she was the first one. So there was a little difference here, but Jonathan was part of the upper class, and obviously Frederick was inherited his father's shipyard, so he was the wealthy lord type, and Jonathan was, I guess, in the maybe what you would call the mercantile class, the semi-professional class, but he was still young in his career. Like he was advantaged, but he wasn't wealthy and lordly. This guy was wealthy and lordly, and clearly the doctor was also part of the wealthy and lordly class, as heroes in Victorian novels almost always are. They're the gentlemen of leisure, because who else could go out and fight evil and cure problems and be scientists and King Arthur. But
what are your thoughts on was it Professor Allen? Oh, to Albin, excuse me. I thought he was interesting at first, but then seeing how he set up Thomas to not be able to save Ellen at the end, I kind of grew to not like his character. What did you think about him overall?
Yeah, I mean, he was sort of a bastardization of Van Helsing. Um,
Oh yeah, uh-huh. I've seen that
yeah,
movie.
yeah, and I mean, I think that they made him sort of like neurodivergent basically unable to get along with others. Um, but maybe there's something he understood. Like he seemed to have a deeper understanding from books and second or third hand sources. They sort of, because
Yeah.
I gave him. I mean, listen, he's not a likable character, but I gave him the. But he's the only one who knew his ass from his elbow. I gave him the benefit of the doubt that he knew that the only thing that could kill Count Orlok was the only thing that could blind the vampire who's all seeing was his love for her. However, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? However, twisted is not what I'm trying to. I want a better bastardized, but there's a better word for it. However, tainted and poisoned his love was for her, that's the only thing that could do it, and her sacrifice, was required for that. Now, in Dracula, like four men became the heroes and came up with this elaborate plan, which in fact they sort of had in this movie too, but they didn't get to execute it. But as you said, Dr. what's his Allen in this movie, I guess.
Alvin.
Albin, he was sort of a double agent. That's interesting. I don't know if this is on purpose or not, but Albin is sort of means white, albino.
Oh. Well, my thing is, with this movie, because I have a couple of thoughts as far as whether or not I enjoyed the movie or not. But from what I'm understanding, again, because I haven't seen the Dracula that you're referring to with Winona Ryder, but she was the reincarnation of Dracula's wife, which would explain that kind of connection here. In this movie, they don't really explain why there's a connection besides the fact that she interacted with him in some way when she was younger than what she is in the movie. So what I don't understand is what is his connection exactly to Ellen? Why is he so obsessed with her as an individual? That's not really explained in this movie.
I took it that when she was praying, her prayers reached him instead of, I don't know if that's a statement that there is no heaven and hell, and God's not listening, but I took it that her prayers, for whatever reason, reached him in his ears and woke him up, and from that moment on, he was.
Her prayers out of the billions of people reached this. That's what I'm like. They didn't do a good job of explaining why he's so, enthralled by her in particular, even with the prayer. Why her prayers and not
Because she was magic. She's a magic girl. I mean, the Dr. Albin said that very few people are born with the sensitivities that you are. Basically, she's a witch or an empath or a psychic or something, and hers reached him. And once it reached him, because he's a monster, he was basically singularly obsessed. And because he was a monster with hundreds or thousands of years of wealth, and obviously didn't spend it on upkeep, and maintenance.
right.
He was able to use that to mobilize it to enact basically a fairly easy plan that he made unduly complicated by going by sea instead of, because they didn't change the land. They still, I mean, he was still in Transylvania. I think actually in the original it was supposed to be maybe it was Transylvania. I don't know, whatever. But in the Carpathian Mountains in Romania, that's real. Those are real places. The real, the Romanian Alps, Carpathian Alps. That's all a real mountain range. I took it at that, and that's why I watched the beginning a few times to see what was it about. Because as much as I didn't like Coppola's version of why Dracula was so obsessed, he did change it from the book. So I wanted to see what the reason was here. Because again, in Bram Stoker's Dracula, again, it was mostly just Harker just got pulled with the assignment. And from there, Dracula's just like, I'm going to take your world and destroy everything around it because that's what I do. I'm a devil.
So to get into our rankings, right, as far as what we would rank this movie, I do have a question for you, being that you've seen both of the movies here. Which do you prefer, the Dracula or this Nosferatu? I think Dracula came in like 1990 something, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think Coppola's Dracula was more entertaining. It moved more quickly. It actually made a little bit more sense, despite my complaint that I voiced twice now. This, I mean, let's say something nice. I mean, some of the visuals were absolutely gorgeous. Like when she's looking out the window and where the curtain is broken, you know, where it's limbed, you could see. Well, not that way, but she's like, you know, it it looked like a giant with a cowl and a cape, and then when it would close, you would see that there was actually a building in front of her, and there was a shadow or something behind her, and you could feel, you could hear when the voice and when the shadows were used, and it was almost black and white. Beautiful. When Thomas was in Castle Orlok, the scenes with with Orlok speaking over him, and you know, his voice and the like, the lack of noise other than the bare minimal. I mean, it was palpable. There was a physical presence to it. So I mean, that was done beautifully. And there were other times where he used that really well. That said, I think the movie started to drag after a while. Got a little bit silly. You know, you could see where they combined characters. They took Harker's boss and Renfield and they combined them into one. They sort of made the whole scene on the Demeter, you know, it lost any sense of tension. And that was, I mean, that's such a great chapter. I mean, someone else made a relatively, you know, mid movie called The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which was, you know,
oh, I saw that. I saw that. Okay. I saw that.
And and that's because that chapter was so powerful. And I mean, but he did great things, beautiful things where, you know, a body would turn into rats, and then where there were dogs, where there was nothing before, all of a sudden there were wolves and all that. You know, how Thomas would sort of wake up, you know, he was dreaming, then all of a sudden he lost it, and he's in his bed and he doesn't know why, except he's got more bite marks in. The carriage comes up to him and then he's disoriented, and all of a sudden it's like sideways and the door is open for him. I mean, all of that was you know, beautiful, and some of the imagery was shot very well, but I think the Coppola movie was just more entertaining. I mean, Gary Oldman was over the top in his own way, and
okay,
and he seemed almost like a sad sack. He was so in love with Mina Harker. You think even if he did think it was the reincarnation of his lost love, those 500 or 600 years would have hardened him up a little bit.
He's a hopeless romantic.
He was. I mean, he made him like almost like a sympathetic, like sad sack. So this guy was obviously not that, except he was. I mean, they never say how old he is. So, you know, since he's not Dracula, he's not necessarily from like the 1400s or 1500s. He could be much older, but like for him to not know when the sun is rising and setting, just because he's having sex for the first time. And
thirsty for he comes across as her abuser. It's not, at this point, it's like, is it romantic or is it just abuse? You know, and I honestly, things that I enjoyed about the movie, the performances were really good. Like just how everyone was portraying, especially with Ellen here, the actress Lily Rose. What'd you say?
You love that picture.
Oh yeah, because honestly, she did such a great job. Just with her physical acting, because a lot of those expressions and body gyrations, those took some talent. So I think the acting in the movie is really good. Where it loses me is the pacing. And I just couldn't get with the pacing. It got to the point, it took me 3 different attempts to finish this movie. I want to say I started it Friday. I didn't finish it until late yesterday because it just bored me to tears at certain points. But I do think that, again, the acting is spectacular. And I was interested in finding out, what is this dynamic here? Like, it was like, was he her abuser? Was he her lover? What is this connection here? So that was the most interesting part to me when it comes to the movie with Count Ollark. But it's not something that I would rewatch. And honestly, I don't think that I'm the biggest fan of this director. Watching this makes me realize, even The Witch, even though I like that movie, it also had a slower pace.
He did have a slow pace.
So he definitely has.
The payoff was worth it in The Witch to me.
Yeah.
And it more things happened as you went in this sort of.
Yeah, that one had a payoff. No, this one had really no payoff.
Even the ending wasn't much of a payoff. And when it wasn't like this wizened old vampire, Count Orlok, was was fooled by this, and she's like more, and he doesn't know that the sun is
Yeah,
coming out. I mean, come on, man.
that's what I'm saying. There's no payoff in this movie, and that's probably why I enjoyed it less than I did The Witch. So this is what makes me concerned about The Labyrinth, because I love that movie to tears. And if this is what I can expect, but I do know that this director, he also did The Northman with Alex Skarsgård, the Bill Skarsgård's older brother who played
Hmm.
Count Orlok in this movie.
Yeah,
I've heard mixed reviews about that one as well. I haven't seen it.
I didn't like it.
Oh, see, okay, exactly. So
I
it's like something about this director. I think he has a very particular
I liked it,
style.
but I liked it better when it was called Conan the Barbarian. I mean, that was a
Oh,
better
okay.
version of the same movie. But in that, you might remember that the thing that I found most interesting about it is that the evil stepfather or step uncle, whatever he was supposed uncle and stepfather in the end. He prayed to Freyr. So which I'm like, wait, Freyr is supposed to be Vanir and not Asgardian. That's what got me all on that. So, but
Uh-huh.
that's not what I'm supposed to be remembering from that movie. Now, I didn't think it was, I thought it was a trite movie. I mean, like every movie is that Beastmaster, Tarzan, whatever I mean, they're all the goddamn same. And
Mhm.
and he does do that. So I do think very much that Robert Eggers is hit or miss, and a lot of his movies do have a slow pacing. I don't really remember The Northman being particularly slow, but like The Green Knight was perilously slow, and some people loved it. I just thought it was.
I haven't
He,
seen it.
he makes strange casting decisions, which seemingly to me are for absolutely no reason. I don't know, but I'm with you. I appreciated parts of it.
Mhm.
I didn't much like it. I wouldn't have watched it twice if I wasn't on assignment. And you're right.
Mhm.
I don't feel the need to ever watch this again.
I agree. I agree. If I had to give it a star rating, I would probably give it 2.5 stars, maybe three for the performance. I'll be nice and give it 3 stars out of 5.
Out of
Well,
5. Well, 3 out of
mhm.
5, I think is. I mean,
Maybe 2.5 then.
yeah. I'd probably give it. I mean, if you're just looking for, see, I'm not a cinephile, so I'm not like someone that like the beauty in some of the things. Usually, if you lead with me and say the cinematography and the music was fantastic, I'm like, yeah, what about the movie?
Yeah.
But there are people. I mean, that is part of the movie for them, and in fact, it is part of the movie. But when people are talking to me about the Batman and saying the soundtrack is great, like, no, don't lead with the soundtrack was great. Tell me Batman kicked ass.
Uh-huh.
Um, this is a really long way of me winding down. So I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 stars. I'd say this is below mid. If you're a cinemaphile and you want the homage, I mean, some of the use of lighting and shadow and not tricks, but purposeful tricks of cinematography and atmosphere. I think some of the atmosphere is expertly done. It's just sort of wasted on a movie that I thought was uninspired. I thought the movie itself was actually kind of lazy.
I agree, and nothing against the performances. Again, the performances were great. Even Bill Skarsgård as Olaf was fantastic. He completely transformed himself for the role, even with the accent and everything else. But something about the pacing and the writing and possibly the direction of the movie wasn't adding up for me.
Before I
Uh,
forget it, and everyone's like, "Why you keep interrupting her? She's the host." It's because I forget things, and I have to.
Go ahead.
When we had the dream, not so dream, because Thomas's boots were muddy in the gypsy village, when everyone hates him except the tavern keeper who takes his double fare
Uh-huh.
areas. Um, in his dream, they kill what I presume is a vampire, but clearly it's not Orlok. Now, I'm assuming that really happened because there were mud on his boots. Now,
Mhm.
okay, so my first mistake was that she was being taken as a sacrifice to Orlok, which is how they kept Orlok away from the village. But instead, it was, I guess, scent or bait to keep the vampire, otherwise, distracted. But he wasn't. He was completely asleep when they opened and they put that in. So, like, was that like them killing like his last minion vampire, or I don't know. What did you make of that whole scene, other than the gratuitous boobery of actually seeing a nice pair of boobs on screen?
I thought it was just them. I got the impression that Count Olaf wasn't the only vampire, so maybe they just have in their village they regularly kill off vampires in an attempt to kind of
So, but
save themselves.
why they put a naked girl on a horse to do so if
Oh,
it's not like
because
they're killing the
gratuitous
vampire?
nudity,
Why?
gratuitous
Like,
nudity gets asses in the seats.
like I would have gotten it if like you see the vampire feeding on her, and like Orlok, he can't be distracted by anything else, and then they put a stake through his back while that at least would have made sense, and it would have actually tied the end together. In that when vampires are in the frenzy of feeding, they really can't be distracted, they can't control themselves, they can't stop, and even Orlok, the strong one, who's like sort of sees the sun out of the corner of his eye, and he wants to get up, and she goes more, with her last
Mhm.
strength. I mean, she's the hero of this, and good. I mean, I'm cool with that. I'm good with it. The four British semi boobs weren't the ones. By the way, how short is William Dafoe? I mean, he was shorter than the actress. The guy
He's
must be like
probably
5'1".
who knows, who knows, who knows. He's got a big personality though, so he's 6 foot in his mind.
Right, yeah, 6'7" is my. Listen, he's definitely overachieved, but I mean, he looks like a very short man. And I don't think they did that for the role, but maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe somewhere in Egger's mind, it made sense for him to be diminutive to sort of go with his weirdness. But I don't know. How many times can I say that I wasn't fully feeling it? Like it didn't quite connect with me, and I really wanted to connect because I love the Dracula story. And I still think that the best version of Dracula was the 3-part miniseries that Netflix did, where they sort of modernized it a little bit.
All right, all right. Well, those are our thoughts. Shout out to EJ, the TV junkie. She's in the comments. Follow her on YouTube, and shout out to the Evil Dose. Tell the people where to find ya.
Well, if you want to find me on the X, you can find me at Icarus Fell MD or at Dose Evil. But if you want to find me on the podcast with somebody who you might know, the episode I dropped today is with See the Superior on my podcast called Garden of Doom. And we talk about the peacock is proud. And we researched on, the peacock in mythology and symbology, basically going back 6,000 years, maybe older, through modern times. So check that out. He's been on many shows. So if you pull on the Garden of Doom and you subscribe, you'll get Garden of Doom, which is sort of comparative mythology, occult, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, cryptids, some pop culture. We've done shows with, when I say we, I mean C and I, 2 on vampires, 1 on plain old vampires, the other on the literature around vampires, 1 on werewolves. We've done 1 on anime, where you brought me a cosplayer as well, a superhero cosplayer as well.
Shout out to Hellspawn.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And among others as well, where you've been on. With George O'Connor, we talked about Heracles. I don't want to say Hercules again. And you also get Garden View. So if Garden of Doom is like the History Channel from like 8 p.m. later, Garden Views is sort of like more like your 48 hours, where there's sort of like one magazine story, more like legal, business, tech, science, realpolitik, politics, things like that. And then GOD presents the Book of Black is with me and either 1 or 2 of my co-hosts, PJ Black or Mr. Thomas. Both are professional wrestlers. For those of you who only follow WWE, PJ was Justin Gabriel in the Nexus and the Core. He was there for 5 years. And we talk to people in and around wrestling about things that are generally not wrestling related, though wrestling creeps in, sometimes larger and smaller, depending on what the show is. But if you want to hear a show where PJ and EC3 crying over a story about Wyndham Rotunda, Bray Wyatt, and I cry. So if you want to see 2 macho men or want to hear 2 macho men and me weep, you can check out that show. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And if you're here, if you like the video, please like the video and let me know in the comments if you guys would like more of these longer format movie reviews. Let me know. And we will see you later. Goodbye. Talk to you later. Goodbye.